Welcome back to All This Math. This is your host, Professor Parker, and we're going to do another word problem today. All right. Now, this word problem that we're about to get into involves the slope-intercept form of an equation. So we call these y equals mx plus b word problems. All right, y equals mx plus b word problems. Now, let me read the problem. Now, you can read along. The problem is listed in the description underneath of the video. You can read along. All right. Now, the problem reads like this. It says, you have $65 in a savings account, and your brother has $140 in his savings account. You are depositing $15 per week to your account, and your brother is depositing $10 per week into his account. In how many weeks will you and your brother have the same amount of money? Write an equation and solve the equation in order to get the answer. Now, let's read it again. Let's run it back from the top. You have $65 in a savings account. Your brother got $140 in his savings account. So you got 65, your bro got 140, right? You're depositing $15 each week. You're being consistent. You're depositing $15 each week. Your bro is depositing $10 per week into his account. So notice you start out with less money, but you're depositing more money per week. Your bro starts out with more money, 140, but he's depositing less each week than you. In how many weeks will you and your brother have the same amount of money? All right. Now, real quick, this is a picture of a young William Edward Burghardt Du Bois. It's a young W.E.B. Du Bois, right? With the caption, educate to elevate. Now, this is relevant. This brother is relevant to this picture. This word problem, because in the Souls of Black Folk, right? Probably one of his most popular works, probably not his best work, because he wrote it when he was, younger in the game. But his most popular work, probably, published in, I believe, 1903, I want to say. There's an essay he writes in here which speaks about the Freedmen's Bureau and how basically the United States government stole the money from black folks during Reconstruction from the Freedmen's Bank, right? The Freedmen's Bureau was supposed to manage that and oversee it. And then there was a Freedmen's Bank that black people were depositing their money into during Reconstruction. And the money was just gone. There was no FDIC insurance back then. The money is just gone. And actually, I've thought, when I learned about that, I thought to myself, I said, well, maybe that's part of why many black people don't trust banks. Who knows? But something to think about. Definitely do your research on Du Bois. Read his work. Read his work so you can read for yourself what he actually wrote himself. Don't only rely on what other people say about the brother. You shouldn't do that with nobody, really. But, read his work. He wrote a lot of books, a lot of articles, a lot of texts. Read his work and study his analysis for yourself. Some things you'll agree with, some things you may not. And that's all good. But anyway, I just wanted to point him out because he's on my shirt, and some of his work that he put in is relevant to the problem we're about to do because it deals with banking. All right. Now, whenever you see a problem where you start out with a certain amount of money and then a certain amount of money is either being spent every week and it's the same amount of money, or a certain amount of money is being added or saved or contributed every week and it's the same amount of money, we are dealing with y equals mx plus b. So a lot of people complain about never having used y equals mx plus b after high school. And I'm like, okay, I guess you never worked a job where you had to calculate your paycheck before your paycheck was given to you. Because whenever you calculate your paycheck, and maybe it's not your fault, maybe your teacher didn't break it down to you and tell you like, yo, whenever you calculate your paycheck, you're using y equals mx plus b. Because m is your pay rate or your wage. X is the amount of hours you work, or the amount of weeks you work, or whatever, amount of days, whatever. B is the amount of money you start out with, maybe if you have a sign-on bonus or something like that. A lot of times B would be zero. Like if you just work a job, you get paid hourly. Really, you're only worried about y equals mx, and B is represented by zero because you don't have like a lump sum of money that they're giving to you up front. So you take your hourly wage, multiply by the number of hours you work, and you should be able to calculate what your gross pay should be for that week or that 2 weeks or whatever the pay period is. You know what I'm saying? So whenever you calculate your paycheck, you are using Y equals MX plus B. Straight like that, whether you want to believe it or not. All right? You're using Y equals MX plus B. All right. So now, in this type of problem that you see, whenever you start out with a certain amount of money, that's your B value. And whenever you're contributing money and it's the same amount of money, not like $40 here, $10 here, $3 here, $12 here, $1 here, then the next week, nothing. Next week, nothing again. Then you back up like $5. No, when it's a consistent amount of money being contributed or a consistent amount of money being spent, we're using Y equals MX plus B. So this is what we should do. In this particular problem, you, right, the you in this problem and their brother have their own Y equals MX plus B equation. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to write an equation for each of them. So we got U, which is Y equals MX plus B. And then this is going to break down to Y. We don't know what Y is yet. We know what M is. M is the amount of money that's being contributed on a weekly basis. Whenever there's a consistent amount of money being put up on a consistent basis, that's your M value. That's your M value. So memorize that. That's your M value. So you got she putting up, or you, the main character, I'm gonna say the main character in this word problem, right? Because this word problem is a story. Every word problem is a story. It's like a movie, right? So we got 15x. X is the amount of time, which we don't know, right? Which could be anything. 15x plus 65. So the main character, that's their equation. Y equals 15x plus 65. What you start out with, before you start doing those consistent contributions, those consistent deposits, those consistent withdrawals, right, is your B value. That's your B value. That's the Y-intercept if you were going to graph it, right? Because that's when your time is 0. When X is 0, this is how much you had. So before the clock start ticking, that's how much money you had. All right. So that's their equation. Now, her brother, or the main character's brother, right, is Y equals MX plus B also. And his equation is Y equals, let me see, he's putting up $10 a week. So that's 10x. He starts out with 140. So Y equals 10x plus 140. Right? So they got their own equations. Y equals 15x plus 65 and Y equals 10x plus 140. Now, what we're trying to figure out is in how many weeks? In how many weeks? So that's a when question. That's a when question. That's what X is all about. X is the number of weeks. X is the number of weeks. When we're dealing with Y equals MX plus B, X is the amount of time. Most often, X is the amount of time. X tells us the amount of time. Remember I told you earlier, whenever you calculate your paycheck, you're using Y equals MX plus B. M is your hourly wage. X is the amount of hours you work. X is the amount of hours you work. So X represents the amount of time that goes by. So in how many weeks will you and your brother have the same amount of money? The same amount of money. So basically, Y represents the amount of money. M represents how much money is being contributed on a weekly basis. X is the number of weeks. B is how much you start out with, right? They start out with 65 and 140 respectively. Now, so we're looking at when will they have the same amount of money? So basically, when will Y equal Y? That's the question. When will Y equal Y? So basically, what will the value of X be when Y is equal to Y? When Y is equal to Y. Now, we can't do nothing with Y equals Y, because, I mean, what are we going to do? Like, you're going to subtract Y from both sides, do Y minus Y, and that's 0, and then 0 equals 0. That'll help us. But I know what Y is equal to. Y is equal to 15x plus 65, and Y is also equal to 10x plus 140. So if Y is equal to Y, think transitive property. You probably heard that before. Transitive property. If Y is equal to Y, and Y is equal to this, and Y is also equal to this, that means that this is equal to this. So these two got to be equal to each other. These two expressions have to be equal to each other. Again, these expressions must be equal to each other because these variables are equal to each other. How do you know they're equal to each other? Because they're the same exact variable. They got to be equal to each other. So that's how we create our equation. So when you see a problem like this and you want to know at what time will two things be the same, or will the y values be the same? You know you got to match up the expressions and create an equation where they both of the expressions are equal to each other. So this is going to be my equation. 15x plus 65 is equal to 10x plus 140. That's my equation. That's my equation. So once I solve for x, I'm going to know after how, that's the number of weeks until the y's are equal to each other. Because this is the scenario that we created by making this equation. Because this means that y is equal to y. So in this situation, this is where y is equal to y. Now you don't see the y's, but it don't matter because you know that each of these are equivalent to y. This is like saying y, this is like saying y, except I got these expressions. All right, and that's how you do a problem like this when you see it. So now let's do this. Let's do minus 10x minus 10x. Boom, boom, that's 5x plus 65 is equal to 140. Then I'm going to get rid of the 65. Minus 65 minus 65, because it's all about balance, right? So I got 5x is equal to, what's 140 take away 65? That's 75, right? And then 5x divided by 5, because I'm trying to solve for x, and 75 divided by 5. Boom. Let me swing this up here. X equals 15. So that means that if x equals 15, that means that after 15 weeks, they're going to have the same amount of money, right? Now, let's say I want to check my work because I want to be sure. I want to be absolutely positive that this makes sense and that this is true. So let's do it. Let's throw this 15 in each of these equations and see what happens. So let's do this. Y equals 15 times 15 plus 65. What does that give us? Use order of operations. What's 15 times 15? 225. Make sure you know your multiplication facts. What's 225 plus 65? 225 plus 60 is 285. 285 plus 5 is 290. So that means that at the 15 weeks, the main character in the problem is going to have $290. The main character is going to have $290. Now, what's going to happen to her brother, or to the main character's brother? I keep saying her because, shout out to Amelia. This problem came from a young sister that I tutor named Amelia. That's why I keep saying her, because I'm looking at this in the context of her, as if she's the main character in this problem. That's why I keep saying it. But anyway, 10 times 15 plus 140. Order of operations, 10 times 15 is 150. 150 plus 140 is, again, 290. So look, it's true, it's valid. At the 15 weeks, meaning when you put 15 in for X, they both gonna have $290. Even though they both started out with different amounts of money, and even though they both putting in different amounts of money every single week, after 15 weeks, that's when they're gonna match up. All right? So they're gonna match up at the 15 weeks. Now what's gonna happen after 15 weeks is, since she's putting in more money every week, she's putting in $15, he's only putting in 10, then she about to, she's gonna run away. She's gonna have more money after that, right? Because he's never gonna be able to catch up if he's only putting in $10. All right, even though he started out with more up front, she's putting in more on a consistent basis. So this is something you need to think about when you get into investing. And you start thinking about investing, saving money on a consistent basis. You need to think about the math that's involved in all of that, right? You need to understand your algebra. You need to understand algebra so that you can be a better investor and a long-term planner, all right? These formulas are helpful. These formulas are very helpful, all right? Don't run away from them. Don't be scared of them, right? Embrace y equals mx plus b. You know what I'm saying? Embrace it, all right? And when you see problems like this, just remember, the y is the total value that you end up with. If we're dealing with money, that's the total amount of money we want to end up with. M is the amount of money that's being deposited on a regular basis, or the amount of money that's being spent on a regular basis, or the amount of money that's being withdrawn on a regular basis. X is the amount of time. X is the amount of time, the number of hours, days, weeks, months, years, whatever, seconds, minutes, right? B is the amount of money you start out with before you start making deposits, before you start making withdrawals, before you start making payments, whatever, before you start receiving payments. B is what you start out with. In a lot of cases, B is going to be zero. In this particular problem, they started out with $65 and $140 upfront money, respectively, So I wanted to go over this. I like problems like this. I like dealing with the word problems because the word problems help you see the relevance of math. And that's one of the issues that we have. We sit in class and we don't see the relevance of math. So a lot of us just zone out and disengage. But I want you to understand the relevance of math, right? But you got to do word problems in order to see the relevance. And now you can take this skill and this concept and apply it in another situation. All right. So practice problems like this when you see them, or go find some problems like this to practice. Also, read up on W.E.B. Du Bois, read up on a lot of the work that he did, a lot of the work that he wrote himself, and also a lot of his contemporaries, right? Because it's not just about him. It's about a lot of the work that was being done at the same time by other individuals. All right. So go get some practice and I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.